good morning and happy Sunday. I am wanting to do something a little different with this video. It's been a while since I've pulled any kind of cards on camera, and I'm wanting to deepen into that practice. So today I want to pull some cards and have a conversation from that place. I want to start hosting a soulful Sunday kind of vibe on this channel, where not every Sunday, but when I feel called, when I have time, when I have the energy, when it feels like I want to use this as a space to just deepen that spiritual awareness, share more of that side of myself on camera. Yeah, so we're gonna see what the conversation is today. I would like to pull some cards for the past, the present, and the future. I can do 3 cards each. Past. 3 cards for the present. The lesson we're navigating presently, the outcome of that lesson. And then future. I want to do one of these for the future. Okay, let's see what we've got. So with the past, we actually have 3 water cards, and I'm primarily using this deck, Mythical Goddess Tarot. That's basically like regular tarot, but they use a slightly different version of the elements. It's a deck I've been working with for a few years as I've wanted to deepen into my relationship with the feminine, sacred feminine in particular. So this is how the imagery of those cards, this is the back of them. I'll let you decide what that resembles to you. And then here are the 3 cards that I pulled for past. So it's a lot of water cards, 3 water cards. I've actually seen each of these 3 cards in recent readings for myself that I've done. The past all being seas cards definitely stands out to me. Water element is about emotions, it's about feelings, it's about inner depths. So there's a clear discussion of the past in terms of accessing those inner depths, those inner realms. Really getting into the flow of our emotions. Like this card, it's literally just pouring up and through her. The way that she feels isn't something she restricts or holds back or holds shame about. It flows through her as she continues moving towards her goal, her vision, her sight for the future. She just lets that water wash off her back, come through her heart and then wash off her back. I've been feeling a similar vibe with this last Scorpio season, especially that new moon in Scorpio that kicked off Scorpio season. There was I've been experiencing just a lot of a ricochet effect, it feels like, between past and future, where I can feel the emotions of experiences that have happened in my past, both dating back, way back, childhood, ancestry, etc., and more recent past. That emotion has been present with me, but it's felt in a different way. It has felt more like this, that there's a flow, that there's an openness, that there's not a restrictiveness. Oftentimes with our emotions, especially when it is something that has come through the past, when it's something that hits us deep in the heart, we can clench around it almost. We can hold on to it. We can be afraid of feeling it fully because we feel like that water is going to overtake us. And, she's standing in some water here. So there can sometimes be a fear with feeling the emotions, feeling the depths of our past experiences. There can be a fear that that water level is going to rise and take us over and be something that ends us, something that we can't get out of, something that we're stuck in, that we're drowning in. But she has no fear in this card. And that's the truth, right? Is that when we feel our emotions, they actually hold less power over us, not more. When we restrict, we don't allow ourselves to feel. We cap off that flow. I'm reading this card as though like that water is like flowing through her chest and then coming down off her back. That's how it's feeling to me right now. And when we restrict that, when we're feeling it, so the water is still in our hearts, but we're not letting it flow off the back. We're not letting it move through us fully because we're afraid of feeling the fullness of it. That actually is a way that keeps us stuck. It keeps us focused on the water instead of, this flower up here that to me is representing her vision, her calling, what's really important. These cards, I feel, build on that. With the dolphin, it feels to me like almost the next iteration of this version where she's let that emotion flow through her heart, come down off her back. She's allowed it to pass through. And through that, now she can ride. Now she can ride the emotion. She's like riding a dolphin here, but something I think about a lot is what it means to ride the wave of emotion, like a surfer, where you're on top of it, where you're much more in control, versus, again, if we restrict this flow, then we're just, if you've been in the ocean before and a wave has caught you off balance, you didn't know it was coming, you get like topsy-turvy underneath the water, it's hard to suss out like, what's up, what's down, where do I need to go? It can be a very confusing and overwhelming process and experience when we're not holding a conscious awareness of our emotions, including the conscious awareness that they flow through, that it's not something that we're going to be stuck in forever. That's a big part of what allows us to then ride the waves of that emotion. And this one, she's feeling joy, and that's great. Like, that's a fun emotion to feel. That's not one that we usually shy. I mean, it can be one that we shy away from. Sometimes we have struggles feeling worthy of like fully feeling our radical joy to the extent of this, where she's just, she's just feeling it, fully embodied in it, free, naked, hair flowing in the wind, just like complete liberation, riding that wave of emotion. It can feel scary to feel this deeply. But when we allow ourselves to feel this deeply, this is how we get to this place. So like I was saying, she's riding the wave of joy right now, and that can be an easier wave to ride than a wave of grief, a wave of despair, a wave of rage. Sometimes those are ones that can turn us topsy-turvy. What's the word I'm looking for? Topsy-turvy. Oftentimes those are the experiences that can turn us really topsy-turvy within the wave. But it's actually the same. It's actually the same. And that's something that I've been walking with lately. If you've been watching my videos, I've done a lot of learning how to feel grief, because there's a lot of grief with letting go and letting ourselves change. I think grief is a natural part of life. There's grief with everything. There's grief with letting go of everything, even seasons changing. There's grief with that I can feel within myself. And again, when I hide, when I don't allow the fullness of that emotion to flow through me, that's when grief becomes my enemy. That's when grief becomes something that I'm running from and hiding from and numbing and dissociating and distracting and trying to avoid. When I can approach my grief like this, it's a very different emotional experience. This compassion card. I pull this one often. I actually want to remind myself what the deck says. They just have these like little descriptions that I oftentimes don't read. I like to go with just like the imagery and what it evokes in me, but this one talks about the symbolism of dragons, ancient goddess symbols of compassion. That's what dragons are, according to this little book. They hold the sacred feminine energy of sexual power. Heart-centered and wise, they dance around the pearl of wisdom, each carrying aspects of the loving compassion they represent. Unconditional love, emotional energy, love of humanity. Yeah, building from those other two cards, to me that pearl in this flow is representing like the sacredness of our emotional experience, the sacredness of being able to feel. Maybe that little pearl represents the sacred feminine. Maybe that little pearl represents our purity, our innocence. Maybe that little pearl represents our grief, our rage, our loss. But these little dragons, you know, it's meaningful that they're representative of a feminine energy, because that is something that feminine energy offers, is depth of feeling, is a recognition and an understanding that there are no bad ways to feel, that every emotion within the human experience is worthy of being felt and holds an important meaning. That when we hide from the darkness of our emotions, we're hiding from true parts of ourselves. And when we embrace the darkness of our emotions, when we embrace the darkness, the unknown, the uncertainty, you know, like the inner cave of that lives within all of us, the inner cave of even the human collective experience, and the dark emotions, the dark energies, the aspects of humanity that have been judged and demonized and shamed and weaponized. When we cut ourselves off from the dark, we're also cutting ourselves off from the light. And when we treat all of our emotions like this precious pearl, the rage, the sorrow, the grief, even the envy, you know, anything that, the shame, the guilt, anything that we don't want to feel, when we treat those like pearls of wisdom, when we treat those like precious pieces of ourselves, not because we're defending the right to feel that necessarily. You know, these dragons aren't trying to protect this pearl to like always keep this pearl exactly as it is. But these dragons are recognizing the value of that pearl. These dragons are recognizing the sacredness of that pearl. And when we can treat those emotional experiences within us from that lens, it becomes a very different way of moving through life. It becomes a very different way of living as a human and viewing our inner realms. It changes our relationship with the world around us, because we don't have to make decisions out of fear and avoidance and trying to avoid the things that we don't want to feel. I don't have to make decisions to try and like minimize the amount of shame that I might feel, because I recognize that any emotion I have, including shame, there's a pearl of something there. There's a pearl of wisdom there. There's a pearl of growth there. There's a pearl that when I can approach and treat as though it has value and holds value for me, it does. And then I can ride the waves, feel the freedom, feel the emotion just like pouring through me. It doesn't have to stay stuck. It's actually a counterintuitive way, but you know, I can definitely relate to that, because historically, shame in particular, let's just keep going with that. Shame has been something that I have really not wanted to feel. And when I was unconscious of the importance and the impact and the true meaning of emotions, I was constantly running away from shame. And what that meant is that I was constantly running away from true parts of myself that I was afraid were going to trigger the shame that I didn't want to feel. And when I investigated that shame and sat with that shame, and this is like, I feel like this is a lifelong process. I'm not saying that, feel your emotion and you're never going to have to feel shame again. But when I learned how to have a different relationship with shame, shame took on a different meaning in my life. And now it's something that I pay attention to and I look at because I recognize like, oh, there's something there. Like there's a limiting self-belief. There's like a trauma pocket that I haven't unpacked well enough yet. There's a part of myself that is afraid to express because it's received judgment in the past from other people. How can I love that part of me more? How can I treat that shame, whatever is being triggered in that moment, like the pearl of wisdom that it is? Because that is the key to transform and transmute and be able to have a more whole, a richer human experience. So that's interesting that these three cards are what came up for the past. I've really been feeling that, like I said, especially coming out of this last Scorpio season. We've recently moved into Sagittarius season, and there's a full moon in Sagittarius coming up, but we're still carrying some Scorpio lessons forward with us because we opened a new moon a couple weeks ago in Scorpio. And so this full moon is kind of like the culmination of the lessons that were opened with that new moon. So we'll continue to be leaning into some Scorpio lessons through this next moon cycle until the coming new moon. I'm not sure when that is, but it'll be like 2-3 weeks from now. So I bring up Scorpio because Scorpio is very much about getting to the bottom depths of our emotional experience. Scorpio is like the scorpion who crawls along the bottom of the ocean and stirs things up and looks in the places that, other fish, other beings, other entities don't want to look into. And Scorpio wants to stir that up so that we can feel everything. So it's really fitting to me that that's what's coming up today. And that definitely speaks to where I've been at too, just a real deeper look into the ways that I'm feeling and how can I work with what I'm feeling and not avoid, deny, or judge it. So you've got a couple major arcana cards in here. And that feels meaningful to me too. So here they are again. We've got this Pele with a very, vaginal sort of symbolism going on. A volcano opening situation. We've got the earth card, an earth card, a crone. And then this Ixchel, the moon card, beautiful. I'm going to glance at the descriptions for Pele and Ixchel. Ixchel. Hope I'm saying that right. Ixchel. Okay, yep, we've got definitely an earthy vibe for this one, for the present series. It says, Pele is the Hawaiian goddess of fire who lives on earth, the original divine spark of creation. She is eternal life and creation, the goddess of volcanoes. Pele's unquenchable fire is the purifying force that provides balance to the desecration that humans are responsible for on earth. She is righteous anger and demands respect for life and the planet. Purification, transmutation of old into new. She's the transformative change that leads to healing and reintegration into wholeness. When Pele appears, expect the unexpected. Her purifying fire often destroys well-laid plans and established comfortable form that no longer serves you. She brings the supreme opportunity to align with spirit and come away from attachment to the physical world in the past. Through her dismembering influences and rude awakenings, you are regenerated right down to your cells. She's an intense card. Earth Crone is going to be similar. So that's an Earth card as well. Yeah, Crone is the equivalent of, is it the king in normal tarot decks? I think I'm forgetting what the arrangement is. So again, transmutation is a theme here. The radiant crone of earth represents the ascension of the body, her very cells transmuted to light. She's the warrior goddess aligned with the passionate earth, breaking old stories and shifting behaviors. She brings opportunity of new consciousness, heart, mind, and body. She shifts the DNA through her transformative power. The earth crone brings you the power of change and ascension while still embodied. Welcome the shift and let your world ascend into integration and healing. Transmutation again. And then Ixchel. The Mayan moon goddess. Creativity, fertility, and healing. Medicine. She's the weaver of the fabric of life. The goddess of childbirth and flowing waters. The soul of the moon, weaving the colorful fabric of life through her magic and knowledge. From her skirt flows the river of rainbows, and she is the mother of all plant life. Pay attention as Ixchel calls forth your cellular memory from your subconscious into the light of your conscious mind. As you take time for deep reflection, many mysteries will be revealed to you. Let the information that surfaces assist you in making choices that honor the depths of who you are. Okay, cool. So the past cards that we just looked at are all about feeling emotion, letting that emotion flow, reworking our relationship with emotions so that we can ride the waves instead of having them wash over us, turn us topsy-turvy, get us lost, keep us stuck. So that's what I'm really seeing with these cards, is this is like the next evolution of what happens when we fully embrace the feeling of our emotions. And this has been very true for me. And you know, this reading is largely for me because I'm the one who's reading it, but it ripples out to many of us / all of us. So these are lessons for you as well if you are watching this. So the past process tells me that, you know, maybe that's not something that we have all necessarily mastered, certainly not, but it tells me that that is a necessary stage that then builds to this present series, these 3 cards that I pulled for the present. So through the past of feeling our emotions, really learning how to be fully within with who we are, what we're experiencing. That's what brings that power of manifestation, of transmutation, of like an actual physical, real world deconstruction, reconstruction process. So water cards are about our emotions. Earth cards, and you know, we have 1 earth card, but these other 2 are quite earthy in their descriptions too, and just in their visuals. Earth cards are about things that are happening, actually manifesting, actually playing out in the physical realm. So the gateway to transmutation, the gateway, I'm getting like a phoenix sort of vibe, especially from this one. There's like I think this is actually stepping onto the toes of the future deck as well, but there's like a phoenix energy that's happening with this reading. And these 3 cards are like the next evolution of that phoenix process. First, the phoenix must feel and must learn to feel. And then through feeling, the phoenix is changed. Through feeling, the transmutation comes and melts everything in the physical that is no longer needed and paves the gateway for something else to rise through. Feeling our emotions paves the way to being able, you know, she kind of looks like she's like pulling, her eyes are closed, she's focused, her hands are raised. It looks to me as though she's kind of like pulling this like flow of expression down and through her form and then out into the world around her, painting this beautiful tapestry of color and feeding into the plant life. And this is really symbolic to me of our creations, of our creative expressions. And that can be through like literal creative expression, through art, through writing, through painting, through, you know, I've been like making these little bracelet things, which has been really fun for me. Look how pretty that one is. It can be literally that, you know, and it's like rainbow colors. So that's symbolic too. But it can also be through work. It can also be through our relationships. There's a lot of ways that we can flow through and allow the colors of who we are to paint an image, to paint our physical reality. Yeah, and we can do that with work projects. We can do that with relationships to people in our lives. We can do that with the ways that we're raising our children, or the ways that we are decorating and cultivating our physical environment, our home. There's a lot of different ways that we can allow the essence of who we are to come about in the physical world. And there is that phoenix vibe to this in terms of, you know, like a little destruction is necessary in that process, a little bit of turning to lava, that's the word I'm looking for, a little bit of turning things into lava, letting aspects of what's in our reality melt away and be literally transmuted into something else. That's what fire does, right? It takes one thing, and then when we put that thing into flame, it becomes something totally different. Might turn completely to ash, but it could be something else too. You know, it could turn into a diamond. I think heat and pressure, is that how diamonds are made? I'm sure there's something that is made through heat. This to me feels like the power of what we can do with our emotions when we're no longer afraid of feeling them. We can literally use them to transform our environment and bringing about ascension. Now, what is ascension? What is ascension? We hear that word a lot, and I feel in spiritual communities it's become a buzzword, just like trauma has in social justice and social work realms. What is ascension? Ascension is letting ourselves be changed. Ascension is being like the phoenix and letting the parts of myself that are no longer who or where I want to be going die, literally die, turn to flame, turn to lava, turn to ash, in order to create space for the new that wants to be birthed. The phoenix is ascension. The phoenix lets himself be completely burned, completely destroyed, so he can rise again. The butterfly, the moth, they are ascension. They start their life in one specific form, and through literally turning their physical form into goo, they can then reconstruct themselves into something else. They can then reconstruct themselves into their next form. Ascension is letting change happen. And I view this as like a continuous process. Like there's big waves of that kind of change we can make in our lives. There's like big parts of ourselves, our old selves, that we can burn and turn to ash and reconstruct into something new. And there's little ways that we go about this too. So ascension is an ongoing process, and it is a multifaceted process. And sometimes it's slow and sometimes it's fast. But at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's letting go of the old and literally constructing something different in its place. And just like look into her eyes for a moment. Like look into her eyes for a moment. It's not perfectly focused, but she's not angry. She's not scared. She's compassionate. She's loving. She's gentle. It's not a destructive, I'm gonna burn this part of myself and I'm gonna burn this part of my reality and tear it apart. It's not that. It's like an invitation. It's an invitation into her depths. It's an invitation to follow and just allow and to trust in that process. To trust through the surrender. I mean, just like emotions, we have to trust that the emotions are going to flow through and off of our backs. When we're in a process of deconstructing our physical reality and constructing something else, there's a similar surrender. There's a similar existing in flow. There's a similar relaxing into it and a letting go and a riding of the wave instead of fighting it, resisting it, trying to have control over it. Ascension happens naturally. You know, the crone is a symbol of age as well. Age happens naturally. It's not something we have to push for. I mean, you know, we have to take the leaps and make the steps and make choices that align us along the way. But it's a natural process. When we open, when we allow, when we tune in. Okay, so feeling the emotions, building a different relationship with our emotions, learning how to treat our feelings like the sacred pearls of wisdom that they are, leads the way naturally without having to force or push or resentfully disassemble ourselves. Like the phoenix doesn't resentfully throw himself into the flames. The phoenix just allows it to happen in recognition that it's a cycle of nature. It's the next stage of the evolutionary process. So that's what these cards symbolize to me too. The next stage of the evolutionary process of reworking our relationship with our emotional experience, getting deeper in tune with what's going on inside of us. The next natural process of that stage is it changes our world. It changes our physical reality. And how can we allow that to happen? And the final stage, future. I'm going to talk about this card last because I feel like this is an ending oracle card for us. But I do want to say that the symbolism of all of these strikes me. Like this card is balance, literally balancing like the light and the dark here. And this is a wind card, so this is speaking to our mind, our thoughts, the intentions that we put out into the world. There's a balance here that I see reflected in these two as well. Like this kind of like a, you know, this one, this, what is that, like a fire plant? This fire plant is like bringing itself up out of the ground And she kind of strikes me that way too. Just like emergence out of the ground, in symmetry, in harmony, in balance. All right, let's take a look. Okay, yeah, so Wind card speaks to thoughts, visions, the conscious link between human beings. It's a powerful, active, creative force that brings ideas and inspiration that generate form. So it's speaking that this specific card, these flamingos represent peace of mind, mental agreement through their yielded flexibility on land, water, and in the skies. They face each other in dynamic balance, bringing stability and harmony of ideas and factors. These birds are willing to shapeshift to come to agreement for the good of the whole, surrendering their desire to lead or control. The flamingos fly into your cards to teach the effortless ease through which mental balance can be found when personal agenda is released and all share equally in responsibility for group harmony. Follow their lead in surrendering and yielding to the common middle ground where balance and peace of mind are found. Interesting. And I'm struck by like the yin yang aspect, and that we also have the Kuan Yin card here. I don't know enough about, I think it's just like a coincidence that Kuan's Yin name is Yin. I don't know enough about whether there's actually a link between Yin and Yang and Kuan Yin's name. But I feel like there's a meaning that both of these cards came out together. So even if there's not that understory behind Kuan Yin's name, there's a meaning in this reading about why those two came together. Oh yeah, the future is very much about humanity. Kuan Yin, the Mother of Mercy, Compassion, and Healing, hears the weeping of the world and offers relief from humanity's suffering. She has promised to stay on Earth until every creature alive has attained enlightenment. She radiates the fusion of love and wisdom. Her essence fills all of humanity with peace and comfort, to be filled with her mercy and healed into wholeness, healing others in return. Beautiful Kuan Yin gently yet powerfully invites you to open to the pure stream of love and compassion that is always available. Her invitation is to yield your heart fully, that you may receive her full blessing and in return bless others. The beauty of her soft, pervasive essence reminds you that sometimes passive power is called for, and to offer mercy and gentleness to those in your life. Ooh, we are getting a word with this reading. Okay, so the flow. First, we must feel our emotions fully, without restriction, without judgment, without hiding. Then we allow transformation to play out in our physical world. We allow ourselves to be changed, to emerge like the phoenix over and over and over again, in little ways and big ways, into those next iterations of our future selves. Then we spread to humanity. This is how the world changes. So these cards are about bringing that non-judgment, bringing that allowing, bringing that trust, bringing that faith, that non-resistance that we've practiced with ourselves and our little bubble of reality, extending that outwards. When we don't hold judgment about the polarities that live within us, when I don't judge my shame, when I allow myself to feel grief and joy, when I don't force myself to be one side or the other, and I don't hold judgment or resistance to one side or the other, I'm not restricting my joy, and I'm also not restricting my darkness. That's what gives me the tools to be able to show up and offer that to others. Ugh. War is an externalization of internal disharmony. Oppression, bias, judgment are external manifestations of internal disharmony. When we allow ourselves to be who we are and change with the seasons of life, we don't need to restrict, control, attack, judge, marginalize others. All the bullshit that we see in the world right now, all the devastation, all the horror, it is a reflection and a manifestation of internal disharmony. And that's why these cards came up for the future. Because when we, and this is like such a meaningful reading for me in particular right now, just very validating. Because when we invest in ourselves and we don't have enemies within, when I don't have any enemies within me, I don't have any enemies without. That's a tough pill. That's a tricky one. That's a big one. That's what this reading tells us. That's what my personal experience tells me. There's a lot of nuances. It might be triggering to hear that. But on a grander scale, on a macro scale, that's what's been creating the disharmony that we see in our physical reality. It's a result of self-oppression that's turned outwards. And the place of getting to these balances where we can be that compassionate presence, that calm in the storm, that comfort to the people who are hurting in the world, because there's a lot of fucking people hurting in the world right now. And there have been for a very long time. That's how we get here, is by first achieving this balance within, is by first achieving Kuan Yin status within. When I show up internally and hold this kind of compassionate self-presence for myself, that's what allows me to direct it outwards. It has to start within. And when we do that inner work, we can't help but become this. When we don't have enemies within anymore, we can't help but become this. Again, it's the natural evolution. It's the natural flow of life. It's the natural progression. You know, these stages, past, present, future, that I've pulled here, it's a natural progression. It's the natural cycle of life. It's just what happens when we follow that path. When we let ourselves truly learn how to love ourselves, manifest that within our space, our reality. It ripples out. The waves of that are endless. Okay, so let's end with this one. The Ace of Wands, the roots of fire. From this Next World Tarot deck. This is a really cool deck. Has a very revolutionary, radical vibe. Wands are equivalent to the Wind card in this deck. So we're still, you know, we had like water as the focus and the emphasis of the past set. an earthy focus for the present set in terms of like building out our physical reality, creating our physical form in a way that aligns with who we truly are and who we're ascending into. Now these two in particular are the wand cards that are speaking to intention, vision, rippling that outwards. And the Ace of Wands is the very first card in that deck, meaning that there's a new energy, a new beginning. These cards are really powerful, so I'm going to read you the whole, and it's short too. I'm going to read you the whole little deal. Ace of Wands. After a lifetime of your ambitions being buried and sustained due to the cosmos, the system, and your roots, intention begins to shine in the form of ideas. Inspiration grows in the form of enthusiasm. Renewal urges you to grab that wayward whirlwind, unkempt scheme and let it shine like a fire that keeps you warm as the toxic fumes subside. The Ace of Wands is the birth of a creative seed. The fifth house, the fifth chakra, and the first take of greatness. This is a moment where you decide the definition of art. Ooh. This is a moment where you decide the definition of art. What would it be like to use the world as your canvas? What would it be like if your vision were a form of art and the world were your canvas? You know, when I look at this card, and that's what this whole deck, I mean, Next World Tarot, it's got it in the name. This is like envisioning what is to come when what is around us now falls. That's why I like this deck, is that it speaks along those themes. And it's just like a really cool, radical, revolutionary deck. So that's what I see in this card too, is like, you know, there's this burning in the background. There's this sense that there's all this like mass destruction, systems falling, paradigms falling. I believe that's what we're living through right now. That's what I see. I see systems falling. I see paradigms falling. I see chaos coming as a result of that, which is chaos is a natural response to massive systems changes. It's not always a bad thing. The old has to burn in order to build the new. And we've seen that reflected with our own internal journey in this card reading. And we're seeing that reflected and rippled out into the outer world as well, because that's what this deck speaks to. And that's what I feel these two cards are speaking to as well. That wind energy, that sending of it outwards, that creative vision. How can we use our inspiration to burn the old on a societal level so that this new growth, this new bud of life can emerge? How can we use art in that process? Art is non-restrictive. Art allows us to imagine. Art is not rooted in what has always been. So get your visions out of what has always been. Take your inspiration out of what has always been. Incorporate art into your future vision. If your life were a work of art, how would you treat it? How would you paint it? How would you vision it? How can we create what we want to see? The balance in the world between the dark and the light. The compassionate harmony for everybody. The emergence of this new collective vision. How can we use our own personal transformation process, our own phoenix process to then ripple this out in our inspiration, in our vision, in our callings, in our artwork. It's a progression. The macro is the micro, and the micro is the macro. And something that I continue to believe deeper and deeper, again and again, is that the radical change we want to see in the world starts from here. It starts from within. We make that change within ourselves first and foremost. And then it naturally ripples outward. So that feels like the place to leave it. Just that, let yourself dream of the radical future you envision. Let yourself dream of yourself as the phoenix and what that would open, what that would change, what that would transmute, what that would call in to your own reality, to your own world. And then take it a step bigger, take it a notch bigger, ripple that outward into society. What does the phoenix vision for the future of the world after he's gone through his process, after he's emerged as a phoenix? How does he use that experience to then bring a similar transformative process to the outer world, to the collective, to the broader society, in an effort to shift, in an effort to restore balance, in an effort to bring us back collectively on a big scale, on a grand scale, on a human scale, to what is most important. Compassion, love, safety and sanctity for all. It starts from within. So that's my closing invitation to all of you, is to just like embody this inwards. Embody this inwards. Honor your emotions, your callings. The work starts. That's where the work starts. The work starts here. All right, well, this was fun. Let's do it again. I have more updates and shifts and changes of my own that are coming in the future, so stay tuned for that. I've got a few more videos coming down the pipe. Is that the right phrase? So yeah, I've got a couple more videos lined up, and then we're gonna have some conversations about change, about shift, about the direction of my callings within this specific little YouTube space. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Take good care of yourself. Feel your feels. Let yourself flow. Let yourself become the change you want to see in the world, because that's how we're going to ripple it outwards. All right, until next time.